In the cold exhale of vacuum just beyond the gravity locks of the Milky Way Unified Combat Arena, a gelatinous ambassador from the Zarkith cluster spontaneously combusted. No one paused the broadcast. The crowd, if it could be called that, since several entities floated, oozed, or diffused themselves across the gallery, roared, or vibrated, or blinked in appreciation. A multi-species cacophony surged through the venue like the universe itself had money riding on the outcome. "And we are live," boomed the announcer's voice, projected in 36 languages and one pheromone. "Welcome, warm-blooded, cold-blooded, gas-blooded and energy core-based lifeforms, to the 89th Grand Intergalactic Bloodsport Championship, where peace is brokered one skull at a time." Below, the arena itself shuddered into life, an ancient asteroid hollowed out and retrofitted with stagecraft normally reserved for planetary coronations and bankrupt theater troops. It was part combat pit, part sacred ritual ground, and part intergalactic betting hub, with glistening sponsor banners orbiting mid-air like unwelcome thoughts. One holographic ad read, "Blorg Snacks, the only crunch that screams back." The smell, for those with noses or adaptable chemoreceptors, was a hellish soup of hot metal, boiled algae, and something distressingly close to wet dog. At the heart of this glorious mess, the Peace Through Mutual Slaughter Committee stood proudly behind a marble lectern made of condensed neutron dust. For members were visibly asleep. One was actively dissolving. The chairman, a silicon-based biped with antennae wired directly to the odds market, cleared his throat through a voice modulator set permanently to bored nobility. "Today's match," he drawled, "concerns the mineral sovereignty of the Kepler asteroid cluster, which, for those unfamiliar, is a small but resource-rich belt desired by at least 6 empires and 3 types of space fungi. As is tradition, rather than wage a full-scale war and lose valuable tax revenue, we've opted for a representative duel. One champion per species. Winner takes rocks." A cheer, or burble, or minor explosion. Hovering overhead in a platinum observation booth, the Graxorian delegation was already oozing smugness. As far as sentient beetle tanks went, they were the apex. 12-foot armored juggernauts with redundant nervous systems, ceremonial blades fused to their elbows, and an instinctive loathing for anything with a visible collarbone. They had won the last 7 championships. Earth had not participated in the last 6. Earth's delegation booth was smaller. Technically a shipping container welded to the arena wall. A flickering neon sign read, "Earth. Yes, still here." A middle-aged Martian diplomat in a stained polo shirt lounged on a collapsible chair, drinking something pink and suspicious from a paper cup. The human flag hung half-cocked behind him, flapping in the recycled oxygen stream. "Well," he muttered into his communicator, "at least we showed up this time." The Grand Combat Arena began its opening sequence. Gravity dropped momentarily, causing several octopoidal viewers to ascend involuntarily. Colored plasma lights danced across the walls. The announcer's voice returned, now positively orgasmic. "And for our opening match, a classic, Graxoria versus Earth. One a galactic war power. The other, a mildly intriguing mistake." Bets scrolled rapidly across translucent boards. Odds against Earth, 10,000 to 1. One optimistic Veilthi aristocrat bet on Earth and was immediately disinherited in real time by her family's AI. Deep within the arena's preparation chambers, beneath 40 meters of armor-rated ferroglass, Mira Havelock adjusted the sights on her rifle. The weapon was long, matte black, and looked like it had a vendetta against stars themselves. She moved with the practiced economy of someone who had taken lives under 4 different flags and regretted precisely none of them. Her hair was tucked beneath her helmet, her suit dull gray with minor battle scars. She had refused any decorative insignias. A small, nervous protocol droid hovered nearby, its voice jittering. "Miss Havelock, may I offer you the ceremonial war garland of damp moss from—" "No." "Or perhaps a motivational hologram from your planetary leaders?" "No." "Would you prefer silence and lethal intent?" She finally looked at the droid, her expression unreadable. "Yes. That." The droid beeped approvingly and receded. Mira exhaled once. Her breath fogged the inside of the visor for half a second before the suit systems cleared it. 1 shot. That's all it would take. She ran through the math again. Armor tensile strength. kinetic resistance, wind vectors, recoil compensation, the Graxorian's triple heart pattern. Behind her, the holding chamber creaked open with unnecessary ceremony. A fanfare, muted by distance and taste, echoed in. The announcer's voice filtered through. Behold, Graxoria's pride, slayer of worlds, Korthrenviake, the splitter of time and ribs. A roar louder than a minor thunder god broke loose. Korth entered like he owned not just the arena, but gravitational law. 9 feet tall, plated in obsidian armor traced with glowing scars, his eyes blazed with a sort of religious fervor typically reserved for televangelists and volcanic eruptions. His weapon, a cleaver forged from the spine of a black hole whale, hissed with contained plasma. Each step made the arena groan like it regretted existing. Mira didn't flinch. Her heart rate didn't rise. She had once held her breath for over 6 minutes waiting for a warlord to scratch his head above a trench wall. She had all the time in the world. Korth turned toward her chamber, mandibles clicking in a pattern loosely translatable as you're already a memory. In the betting lounge, a gelatinous economist from Alpha Row 9 nudged a nearby Tvari. I don't get it. They're putting a human sniper against Korth. The Tvari adjusted her crystalline monocle. Not just a human. A female human. This must be performance art. Back in the holding chamber, the final lock disengaged. Myra's door slid open with a hiss that sounded like a suppressed opinion. She stepped forward. Her boots hit the arena floor with a gentle thud. Gravity adjusted to 1.2 Earth standard, an intentional disadvantage. The temperature dropped 2 degrees. The terrain was uneven, sloped toward Korth's side. Another subtle nudge. The rules were impartial in theory, but deeply romantic in their favoritism. Mira didn't look at the crowd. She didn't wave. She didn't grandstand. She walked to her assigned zone and crouched, bringing her rifle up, her eye to the scope, and the rest of the world out of focus. Above, the betting odds changed. 12,000 to 1. The chairman of the peace committee stood again. Combatants, do you acknowledge the terms? Single combat. No substitutions. No orbital strikes. The winner receives exclusive mineral rights. The loser receives an autopsy. Korth thumped his chest, releasing a war pheromone that caused 2 interns to faint. Mira raised her fingers in a minimalist salute. The chairman paused for dramatic effect. Let the blood sport begin. A deep chime rang out, echoing across the void, and the arena floor shifted into formation. Raised ridges, cover positions, low trenches, and glowing kill zones. The audience leaned forward. Korth cracked his neck and bellowed something vulgar in his native tongue. And Mira? She smiled. It wasn't visible behind her visor. It barely registered as a twitch. But it was there. A smile not of arrogance, but certainty. She lowered her profile, exhaled steadily, and muttered just loud enough for her own ears. Let's give them something primitive to remember. From the stands, somewhere above the chaos, the Martian diplomat squinted at the feed and whispered to no one in particular. She's going to do it. The crowd hadn't decided yet whether this was entertainment or execution. But Mira Havelock already knew which. And the Graxorians, despite their armor and arrogance, were about to learn that humans had stopped throwing rocks a long, long time ago. The story had only just begun. Mira Havelock stood alone in the locker chamber, surrounded by whispering steel and stale air that carried the faint scent of ozone and burnt protein paste. Her armor, matte gray with a chipped serial number etched to the collarbone, clung to her with the unassuming grace of someone used to carrying their own weight, both physical and metaphorical. She adjusted the sling on her rifle, a long-bodied precision weapon with a custom grip worn smooth by years of exacting service, and ran a diagnostic sweep through its neural link. It purred back like an old dog that still remembered every kill. The room buzzed with the electric nervousness of anticipation. Overhead, the alien broadcast's faint echo filtered in through the ventilation, cheering in irregular rhythms, species screaming in frequencies the human ear couldn't fully process. Somewhere above, diplomatic careers were already being lost in real time. Her visor hissed open with a soft hydraulic sigh, and Mira blinked against the sterile overhead light. Her face was angular, lined not with age but with precision, as if every emotion had been audited before being expressed. Her eyes, a pale gray just shy of steel, scanned her surroundings the way a sniper's always did. Corner first, then movement, then exit. A courier drone floated in, struggling with the weight of a ceremonial gift basket shaped like an endangered creature and filled with synthetic meats and salt packets. "For you," the drone said in a voice not built for sincerity. Mira stared at the basket, then at the drone. "You first." Excuse me? I don't eat anything smarter than a doormat. That meat's been grown somewhere with eyes and opinions." She walked past it, snagging a salt packet with 2 fingers. "Thanks for the salt." The drone hesitated, trying to interpret the gesture through its diplomacy subroutines, then floated back toward the corridor, mission technically accomplished. Mira made her way down the corridor toward the staging zone. The walls vibrated faintly from the sound of the crowd above, though it could have been the pulse of the arena's gravity cyclers spooling up. Her steps were silent, calculated. Every movement was premeditated. Not with vanity, but the precision of someone who had learned the hard way that unnecessary movement was the same as unnecessary exposure. She passed an observation window, glanced sideways, and caught her own reflection. Not the full woman, just segments. Helmet tucked under her arm, suit armor dull and dented, her eyes sharp and dry. She looked like a technician misplaced into a war. And maybe she was. Or maybe war had just changed too much. Outside the locker chamber, a Graxorian security unit lumbered past, its armored limbs clanking like dropped anvils. It glanced down at her with 2 sulfur-yellow eyes and made a series of grinding noises that the translator caught midstream. "This one is unadorned. Is it not ashamed?" "Decorations catch wind," Mira replied dryly. The Graxorian looked puzzled. "There is no wind here." "Exactly." It blinked. Once. Then lumbered on. A cluster of technicians behind a force field laughed quietly. Not at her, but at the exchange. Mira ignored them. Aliens often laughed at her. Until they didn't. She arrived in the outer staging ring, circular, dimly lit, its floor vibrating with the pulse of audience excitement. Standing to her left, behind a transparent barrier, a 3-headed diplomat with sequined robes was explaining human biology to a fascinated group of Valari tourists, all of whom had pressed themselves against the glass to better observe the Earth specimen. One of them tapped on the window with a glistening pseudopod and whispered, "Small." To Myra's right, the Graxorian champion loomed like a death cult made flesh. Korth Threnvac was crouched in what might have been a prayer or a preemptive gloat. His armor hissed softly with internal pressurization. He exuded menace in thick, oily layers. The floor beneath him had buckled slightly, not by design. Korth opened one eye and fixed it on Mira. He clicked his mandibles in a mocking cadence. She stared back with a kind of serene contempt that only experienced snipers ever achieved. Not hatred, not fear. Just the intellectual recognition that an obstacle existed and would soon cease to. The intercom crackled above them. "Combatants, final preparations. Spectators, please lower your energy barriers. The Peace Committee thanks you for contributing to a diplomatic resolution through ultraviolence." Mira glanced up at the timing display. 3 minutes to drop. Enough. She sat on the edge of the bench behind her and removed a thin pouch from the utility panel on her thigh. Inside were 3 small, cylindrical capsules and 1 copper ring with a single green scratch etched across its surface. She rotated the ring twice around her finger and then slipped it into the back compartment of her helmet. The capsules she swallowed dry. Her visor slid shut again, sealing her in. The HUD flared to life. Wind vectors, material integrity, threat modeling, internal biometrics. All green. All boring. She'd made it boring on purpose. Any system that surprised you during battle wasn't a system. It was a liability. A chime sounded in her ear. Private channel. It was the Martian diplomat. "You there, Havelock? Still breathing? Well, that's one up on my ulcer." He sighed. "Look, you don't have to do this. No one on Earth expects a win. We entered to show face, not guts. Then you shouldn't have sent a sniper. You're not just a sniper. Tell that to the briefing I didn't get. He chuckled nervously. You know what this means, right? You beat him, we own the Kepler cluster. You lose, and Earth doesn't get another seat on the Peace Council for 200 years. Not that we ever used it. Then I suppose we both want a quiet victory. Mira cut the channel before he could say anything else. She'd read the fine print. This wasn't about the Kepler cluster. This was about humiliation avoidance. Earth was barely invited to the table. This match was their polite way of being laughed out of the room. Unless she won. The countdown reached 90 seconds. The staging floor beneath them began to spin slowly, bringing each combatant into position. Mira loaded her rifle. 1 round. High-density uranium core. Custom forged. Hollow tip. Stabilized. She didn't need a magazine. If this required more than one shot, she'd already lost. Across from her, Korth snarled. His cleaver came online with a shriek of plasma ignition. The crowd screamed back. Veilthy spectators began releasing pollen from their gill flaps in anticipation. Mira closed her eyes. The world fell away. She remembered a rooftop in Rovaniemi, 3 hours into a siege. Snow falling so slowly that it looked suspended by choice. Her breath had fogged her scope. Below, a convoy of tanks trudged forward. She'd fired once. Just once. A commander's head had become a red mist, and the siege ended 30 minutes later. She didn't do drama. She did geometry. She opened her eyes as the platform locked into its final position. A voice whispered beside her. Not the announcer. Not an official. Just a field tech with an oversized headset and nerves visibly eroding. Why a sniper? He asked. No one's brought a sniper to Bloodsport since the Alto-Ran collapse. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked through the curved glass separating them from the arena proper and whispered a single word to no one in particular. Because. The platform clicked. The floor sank. The chamber ahead unfolded into a sweeping, canyon-split arena drenched in red light and carved stone. Gravity dropped for 2 seconds, rose again. Korth roared and charged forward to meet his destiny with all the grace of a collapsing mountain. Mira stepped into the light and made no such noise. The spectators roared. The diplomats watched. And somewhere, just beneath the surface of it all, the sniper calculated the wind speed of war. The fight hadn't started. Not really. Not yet. Korth Threnvac, heir to the Graxorian bone mantle, high slayer of the spleen moons, stepped onto the arena floor like he had personally invented conquest and was here to file for back pay. He didn't walk. He thundered. Each footfall cracked the composite plating beneath him, sending seismic shudders through the artificial bedrock. His armor hissed and clanked in mechanical defiance of subtlety. 13 hydraulic pistons flexed with every motion, powered by a mixture of volatile Graxorian blood sugar and vengeance. The air around him shimmered faintly from the heat of his core reactor, biological and otherwise. Even from the viewing decks, the scent of him reached the audience. Scorched metal, phenomenal bravado, and a hint of fermented rage bark. Several spectators activated personal filtration domes. One Veilthy child threw up in her pet's gill pouch. Graxorian protocol demanded silence from their champion during the march, a tradition dating back to their pre-space tribal days when silence before slaughter was considered a sign of respect. Korth honored this, not out of piety, but because he was saving his voice for the post-match monologue. He'd already composed it in his head. In 3 languages. One of which had been outlawed for causing involuntary organ liquefaction. A holographic projection spiraled overhead. Korth Threnvac, 802 victories. 0 defeats. Favorite kill method. Bisection. Dislikes. Negotiation, soft things, and poetry. In the Earthbox, Martian diplomat Leonis Jang finished his 3rd cup of anxiety syrup and stared at the stats. He's not unbeatable, he muttered to no one. Statistically speaking, a losing streak has to start sometime. His assistant, a thin woman with a nervous tic and an encyclopedic memory for last words, nodded solemnly. Statistically speaking, black holes also leak photons. But not enough to bet your pension on. The announcer, now drunk on both attention and fermented Orlax root, screamed across the arena-wide speakers. And here he is, the butcher of 7 systems. The one-man siege engine. The reason why asteroid insurance premiums went up 9% last cycle. Korth. Thren. Vaak. The crowd surged. On a nearby orbital station, a minor religious sect declared this moment holy and began self-flagellating with ceremonial ladles. In contrast, Mira Havelock crouched on the far ledge of the canyon, her figure a mere smudge against the rust-red rock. She didn't radiate menace. She radiated probability, stillness, potential energy distilled into human form. Her rifle lay across her knees like a sleeping god that would wake only for blood. She watched Korth's movements through her visor, each step, each breath, each muscle flex. He was fast for his size. Not unpredictable, though. Mira wasn't concerned with spectacle. She was looking for patterns, for gaps. She didn't see a monster. She saw a sequence of breakable systems pretending to be immortal. The arena around them morphed in real time. The modular terrain shifted under hydraulic command, giant slabs rising or sinking with thundering groans. Spires of basalt emerged like teeth. Plasma creeks hissed into life. It was a killing ground curated for dramatic irony. From the combatant announcer booth, a floating Etherean commentator, 2 heads, 4 tongues, and no tact, began the ritual banter. Let's talk odds. Korth's favored by a 10,000 to 1 margin. And our Earth representative? A sniper. A very small sniper. Who, I'm told, once assassinated a senator with a tuning fork. Correction, its co-host replied. It was a tuning fork and half a lemon. Resourceful, but that's hardly enough against Korth's anatomy. He has 4 livers. Do we know if he needs all 4? I don't know if he needs any of them, honestly. While the commentators speculated on his biology, Korth leapt atop a jagged pillar and flexed both sets of arms, his cleaver glowing white-hot from the ignition chamber inside its spine. The Graxorian war chant began, a deep, rhythmic pounding that reverberated through the bone of the arena's structure. No instruments, just fists against armor, repeated in unison by his entourage. Every thud was a declaration. We came to end a species. Mira lay prone against a shaded ridge, invisible to all but the satellite feeds. She hadn't moved in 4 minutes. Her breathing was shallow, deliberate. The wind in the canyon twisted and danced across the surface like a living thing, kicking up motes of ash and sand. She factored it in automatically, her mind building an ever-evolving model of drag, arc, and impulse. Her rifle adjusted slightly, its scope recalibrating. The neural interface synced perfectly with her vestibular cortex. No need for thumb toggles. No need to speak commands. Her intent was the command. The round chambered silently, waiting for purpose. She watched Korth's charge paths from previous Bloodsport footage stored in her visor's cache. Always left shoulder first. Always one feint before impact. No pattern breaks in 3 years. She murmured under her breath, habit is a weakness wearing medals. The crowd had not yet noticed her. Korth's shadow eclipsed the arena's emotional bandwidth. Spectators came to see death, but they came to witness him, not her. Earth's fighter was an incidental variable, a warm-up act for planetary carnage. A ceremonial punching bag. In a private box, the Graxorian matriarchs nodded approvingly. Korth had earned this blood. His lineage stretched back to the siege of Rakel, when his great-grandfather had personally devoured a rebel moon. Mira Havelock, by contrast, had no lineage worth recording. No banners. No sponsors. No visible narrative arc. She was just a sniper. The match protocol officer, a floating orb with no known gender or mercy, hovered above the arena's midpoint and activated the countdown pillar. Glowing alien numerals flickered down from 10. Mira closed her left eye. Not for aiming. For silence. 9. Korth roared, a sound that rattled molars in 6 rows of audience seats. 8. Myra's HUD synced wind vectors across 17 meters of elevation difference. 7. Korth began to move. 6. Myra's heart rate dropped to 55 beats per minute. 5. Korth leapt from his perch. 4. Myra's scope locked. 3. The cleaver sang. 2. Mira didn't blink. 1. The chime struck. Korth landed with the force of a tectonic tantrum, his cleaver already mid-swing. He tore into the arena with all the grace of an avalanche having an emotional breakdown. The stone beneath him exploded. Dust surged skyward. Mira was gone. Not vanished. Just relocated. Her silhouette flickered briefly from one ledge to another. A movement so fluid, so efficient, it barely registered as human. The kind of motion you didn't train. It happened when you stopped being a person and became a physics problem solving itself. Korth spun toward the motion, snorting plasma from his shoulder vents. His voice boomed. "Come out, little ghost. I do not kill by accident." Mira didn't answer. She was already calculating his next step. The crowd screamed for violence. The arena's commentators screamed for spectacle. The peace committee watched with a bored detachment of bureaucrats waiting for someone to die so they could fill out a form. Korth vaulted over a ravine, tore through a spire, and brought his cleaver down in a thunderous arc that missed by meters, but destroyed 3 tactical blind zones. Mira moved again, this time with a soft footfall and a long breath. She didn't sprint. She flowed. Like time, like inevitability. Her angle changed. Her scope readjusted. The world slowed. Korth turned again, more annoyed than wary. The match was no longer about strength. It was about patience. It was about which nerve would twitch first. And in that slowly tightening vice of expectation, Mira smiled. Barely. Almost imperceptibly. She wasn't the hero. She wasn't the favorite. She was the variable Korth hadn't accounted for. And the countdown to that realization had already begun. The moment shattered the air like a dropped pane of glass. Korth Threnvac, all bulk and roar, swinging his cleaver in a wide arc that severed a canyon pillar clean through, molten rock hissing as it hit the plasma-seared edge. The impact rang out across the arena with the authority of a meteor strike. A cheer burst from the Graxorian enclave, full of ritual glee. They could already smell the blood. Already picture the trophy. But the only thing Korth's cleaver met was stone and irrelevance. Mira Havelock had never been where he was swinging. She moved through the battlefield like a subtractive idea, taking only the space she needed, leaving no shadow behind. The sensors barely registered her. Her rifle stayed silent, scope sweeping slow arcs, not searching, but waiting. She wasn't looking for the right shot. She was waiting for the only one that would matter. Korth, confused now, but too proud to show it, rampaged across the ravine. "Coward!" he bellowed, his 4 lungs harmonizing into a thunderous growl that cracked ceramic plating in the upper seats. "Face me!" Mira ducked behind a collapsed slab of obsidian, her breath steady. She could feel the micro-tremors of his charge through her forearm, pressed against the ground. She didn't need to face him. She needed him to forget she was ever there. He did. Korth turned toward the eastern rise, sniffing the air for ozone and blood. Mira was already behind him, above him, calculating in silence. The arena's artificial lighting cast multiple shadows from the rising spires. He kept glancing at the wrong one. She was 37 meters from him. Elevation advantage of 9.3. Wind shearing from the east at 1.2 meters per second. He was overheating now, his plasma core venting short puffs through his lower armor. Left side, near the hip joint. Weak spot 1. But not the shot. The Graxorian cleaver screamed as it bit into another column. This time, Korth twisted with it, carving the stone into a spiral of molten slag, trying to herd her into the open. He was no fool. Just brutal. Experienced. But impatient. Mira closed her right eye now, breathing in sync with the trembling metal beneath her, the heartbeat of the arena itself. Her scope adjusted for thermal variance, locking onto his silhouette. Every component in her rifle was quiet, hand-machined, harmonically dampened, oiled with synthetic compounds so precise they could only be manufactured once every lunar cycle. She'd named the rifle Solace, once. Quietly. Never out loud. Giving names was a superstition she didn't believe in. Phil. There it was. Korth stopped. His instincts were good. Too good. He dropped into a half-crouch, armor flexing, cleaver spinning in his upper hand, a sonic blade now screeching along the edge. He was baiting. Mira didn't care. She marked the moment, the angle of his kneecap. She needed him to pivot. Once. Below, a shard of rock clattered. He turned. Click. Breath. Pulse. The shot broke time. There was no thunder crack. No celebratory explosion. Just a soft chuff as compressed air and magnetics launched the round. So fast it vanished into physics before anyone could register that it had left the barrel. Silence followed. For a beat too long. Then Korth screamed. Not rage. Not pride. Fuck. He staggered sideways, cleaver dropping from one hand. A pause. Then another. He took 2 steps, deliberate, confused. The crowd didn't roar. It gasped. Species that didn't breathe did it anyway, instinctually. The round had entered through the rear access panel on his armor, just beneath the plasma vent, pierced the thermal buffer, ricocheted twice through his secondary lung cluster, and detonated inside his pelvic stabilizer. He could still stand. But not fight. Not anymore. Mira rose slowly from her perch. Rifle lowered. Korth turned, shakily. His knees buckled. No. She met his eyes. Don't take it personal, she said, voice low through the comms. I had a better angle. He fell. Armor shrieking against stone. The arena trembled. And then the silence cracked, wide and loud and instant. Half the spectators leapt to their feet. The other half just stared. The Graxorian delegation exploded into argument, several stabbing each other for shame avoidance. Korth lay in the dust, blinking at the sky, chest rising and falling unevenly. Not dead, but defeated. For the first time. Above, the scoreboard struggled to update. For a second, it simply glitched, pixels unsure of how to spell it. Then. Victor. Earth. HFY. Mira. The diplomatic chamber erupted into contradictory bureaucratic spasms. She cheated, hissed the Zarn representative, eye sacs quivering. The rules allow ranged weapons, barked a human aide. Yes, but accurate ranged weapons are uncouth, replied a Veilthi arbitrator, adjusting his robes with furious dignity. On the edge of the chaos, Mira stepped down from her perch, calm as dawn. Her boots tapped quietly on the scorched ground. She passed Korth's body and gave it a nod. Respect, not gloat. The crowd screaming blurred into a single note. A frequency she no longer registered. She walked like she'd already left the scene, only her body catching up. Behind her, a drone caught up, breathless and frantic. Mira. Mira. Say something to the Galactic Network. Your win, your legacy, Earth will want a message. She turned, slow and surgical. The drone extended a microphone, trembling on its stabilizer. She leaned in, smiled, faintly, not warmth, precision, then said, "Told you I'm just a sniper," and walked away. The feed went live. Across 53 worlds, silence bloomed like a virus. In the Martian embassy, Leonis Jang fainted into a diplomatic couch made of sentient foam. In the Graxorian enclave, 3 generals ate their rank insignias in ritual disgrace. Somewhere on a distant station, a teenage girl who had hidden her application to Earth's Marksmanship Academy pressed send. And in the records of the Bloodsport Championship, a new entry scrawled itself across time. Mira Havelock. Human. One shot. Echoed forever.